The brutality of the Nazis manifested in exhausting forced labor, where prisoners were compelled to work 12 to 14 hours a day in mines, weapons factories, or infrastructure construction, often until they died of exhaustion. SS guards, trained to view prisoners as subhuman, carried out routine torture, beatings with batons, whips, or attack dogs. In Auschwitz alone, over 1.1 million people perished, mostly Jews, through Zyklon B gas, followed by mass cremation in ovens operating non-stop. Such massacres were accompanied by identity theft. Prisoners were shaved, tattooed with numbers, and stripped of their clothing, stripping away human dignity. Children and women were often the worst victims, with thousands of children subjected to medical experiments or killed outright. Overall, the Nazi concentration camp system caused the deaths of approximately 6 million Jews in the Holocaust and millions of others, creating an efficient industrial killing machine supported by bureaucracy and racist ideology. In 1941, with the Wannsee Conference, camps like Auschwitz and Majdanek were transformed into extermination centers for the final solution, where millions of Jews from occupied Europe were deported and systematically killed to achieve a pure Aryan society. The establishment of camps was also driven by the need to control occupied territories. In Poland, camps like Majdanek were set up in 1941 to hold Soviet and Polish prisoners of war, while in Germany, Dachau served as a model for over 1,000 camps and subcamps. And behind this machinery of death was, among others, Anton Endres. As an SS member serving in concentration camps, Endres represented thousands of guards and medical staff who made prisoners' suffering a daily reality, contributing to the systematic horror at Dachau and Majdanek. Information about Anton Endres' early life is relatively limited. Endres, married and a father of 3, was recruited into the Waffen-SS on September 7, 1939, and his career in the Nazi regime began with immediate assignment to Dachau concentration camp. His early career at Dachau included duties as an SS Sanitätsdienstgrad, SS medical orderly. From December 1940 to June 1941, he was responsible for the medical care of guard personnel. Afterward, he took on additional responsibilities at the Dachau Prisoner Hospital until May 1942. Approximately 200,000 people from 30 different countries endured suffering at Dachau. Of these, at least 25,613 died in the main camp, with nearly 10,000 more victims in its subcamps, most dying due to horrific conditions such as disease, malnutrition, and suicide. In May 1942, Endres was transferred to Majdanek concentration camp, where he served as an SS Sanitätsdienstgrad until June 1943. Majdanek, a camp in eastern Poland functioning as both an extermination and forced labor camp, saw around 78,000 deaths, mostly Jews. His career reflected the mobility of SS staff, often transferred between camps to implement the same brutal practices. His loyalty to Nazi ideology led to promotions, though he never reached high ranks like notorious doctors such as Mengele. He was a field-level executor ensuring the efficiency of the death system. However, he was also briefly assigned to Auschwitz in early April 1943, alongside Erich Mussfeldt, where Endres was directed to familiarize himself with the methods of human extermination in gas chambers. After his service at Majdanek, he returned to serve as a camp sanitary officer at Dachau's Augsburg subcamp starting in mid-1943. Anton Endres' role during the war was as an SS medical service member at Dachau and Majdanek, where he was directly involved in the persecution and murder of prisoners. He oversaw medical procedures that were, in reality, forms of torture and euthanasia. His specific crimes included prisoner abuse through beatings and rough treatment during medical examinations, often used to disguise murders. According to testimony at Dachau, Endres supported the feared Capo Josef Haydn in conducting pseudo-medical treatments and violence against prisoners in the camp hospital. One torture method involved ordering prisoners to lie on an examination table and administering light doses of anesthesia. If Haydn deemed a prisoner to be faking illness, they would beat them with a wet towel, wrap the patient in a thick wool blanket, and place them under a cold shower for 3 to 4 hours, causing the blanket to absorb water and the patient to die from high fever and hypothermia. At Dachau, His role contributed to brutal medical experiments, including hypothermia and malaria infection tests on prisoners, though his direct involvement was likely more in daily executions than research. At Majdanek, operational from 1941 to 1944, Endres was involved in gassing and cremation operations, assisting in the selection of prisoners for gas chambers and ensuring the efficiency of the extermination process. His crimes extended to war crimes against Allied civilians and prisoners of war, including mass beatings and denial of medical care leading to deaths from disease. Overall, his actions were part of a larger system, but his personal responsibility cannot be understated. He actively chose to participate in genocide, causing the suffering and death of hundreds, if not thousands, of prisoners from various European countries. At the end of World War II, the Third Reich collapsed under Allied pressure. American forces liberated Dachau on April 29, 1945, discovering piles of corpses and thousands of near-starving prisoners, while Majdanek was liberated by the Soviets in July 1944. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945, marking the end of the war in Europe and the beginning of the post-war justice era. Anton Endres was captured by American forces and became one of 40 defendants in the Dachau camp trial, the first military tribunal at Dachau, held from November 15 to December 13, 1945. Based on the authority delegated to Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower, this court charged him with war crimes against civilians and Allied prisoners of war in Dachau and its subcamps from January 1942 to April 1945. The evidence presented included survivor testimony and Nazi documents documenting his crimes. On December 13, 1945, Endres was found guilty and sentenced to death. His sentence was carried out by hanging on May 28, 1946, at Landsberg Prison. This execution was part of 28 death sentences carried out in May 1946 for war criminals from various camps. Endres's death reflected the Allies' efforts to bring justice for victims, though many perpetrators escaped.